What's a NSFW history fact that we don't often hear about?
The British Academy of Science redacted massive amounts of the first published observations of penguins by biologists. Penguins are the worst. So much RP. So much necrophilia. The Academy decided the public wouldn't handle it well.
They didn't put that in Happy Feet.
Julius Wagner Jauregg won the 1927 Nobel Prize for Medicine, by giving people malaria. The fever from the malaria would go so high that it could kill off an otherwise untreatable syphilis infection. Left untreated, syphilis could lead to insanity, so it was a pretty bad thing. In comparison, having malaria, which we had treatments for, was a blessing. Link.
Early 20th century medicine was extremely cool because we basically had half the pieces of the puzzle, but damn if we weren't going to try and guess what it was.
In the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan's wife could only eat her cucumbers chopped, so that she doesn't masturbate.
In July 1184, Henry VI, King of Germany, later Holy Roman Emperor, held court at a Hoftag in the Petersburg citadel in Erfurt. On the morning of 26 July, the combined weight of the assembled nobles caused the wooden second-story floor of the Peterskirche to collapse, and most of them fell through into the latrine cesspit below the ground floor, where about 60 of them drowned in liquid excrement.
And he later went on to become emperor. Yeah, totally an accident. He wouldn't have put all the rich, powerful, and important people in one place just to stage an accident for his own power or anything.
There is a man named Ibn Bayez, Link.
Greater than 32 micrograms of radium in him, and 10 is fatal. I'm surprised he didn't die sooner.
Ammonia-rich fumes from a castle's toilet system were used to delouse clothes inside special closets.
The real reason you stand aside when royalty walks by.
After Napoleon's death, it's been alleged, and told to me by a historian at Les Invalides, that his penis was cut off and sold and exhibited through the early 20th century. It was described in 1927 as resembling a piece of leather, or a shriveled eel.
Same goes for Rasputin's DK. Link.
William C. Minor, one of the contributing writers of the Oxford English Dictionary, chopped off his penis using the pocket knife he used to cut the bound pages of his old first edition book.
So that's why it's called dictionary.
Rome lost as many soldiers in one battle as the United States lost in the entirety of the Vietnam War. It was the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC against Hannibal. And this was back when the entire world population was tiny compared to what it is now. Rome lost 20% of its adult male population in a single day. Edit. Extra Credits did a great series on the Punic Wars, Link.
And won the war. That's the craziest part. Affairs didn't stop. You kill 20% of males, we'll come back with the other 80%.
At the beginning of World War II, in Great Britain, over 750,000 domestic animals were euthanized out of fear that rations would be spread too thin and pet abandonment would lead to masses of strays. The National Air Raid Precautions Animal Committee (NARPAC) sent pamphlets out to homes suggesting that people should send their pets to the countryside or, kindly, have them destroyed. This later became known as the British Pet Massacre. Link.
My late grandma had a pet pig that she loved when she was a kid. In her old age, she would repeat the same 3 to 4 stories about him. Needless to say, Piggy didn't survive the war. One day when times were tough, my great-granddad took Sir Oink a lot out back, and the rest is history. I don't think my nan ever really forgave her dad for that.
It used to be thought that blowing smoke up someone's ass was a way to revive them. Some swimming pools actually had a kit with a bellows-type device that blows smoke up the ass of a drowning victim. Edited to clarify tobacco smoke.
Are you blowing smoke up my ass?
Romans used to execute criminals in the Coliseum by recreating myths. A woman was RPD'd to death by a specially trained bull, Pasiphae. A man was given wings and thrown across the Coliseum, Icarus. Another was made to play an instrument and then be torn apart by animals, Orpheus, and many, many more. Edit. The main source is Martial de Spectaculis. I'm uninterested in debating his reliability when he wrote the piece to commemorate specific events that had anywhere between 50 to 87k eyewitnesses. Writers tend to fail when the entire city calls them out for making stuff up.
So anyway, here's Wonderwall. Asterisk gets torn apart by animals immediately after the song. The reason powder wigs were so popular among the wealthy was because it covered up the smell and sores of syphilis.
Don't forget about the lice in ancient Egypt. That's why they wore wigs.
Didn't the author of Frankenstein lose her virginity on her mother's grave?
I went to the Mary Shelley Museum, experience in Bath the other day, and her life is fucking nuts from start to finish.
The CIA gave unsuspecting civilians LSD and then observed their interactions with hookers, paid informants, while under the influence, for experimental purposes. This operation link. Edit, for clarity, added sources for your infotainment. Boston, Corbett, the guy who killed John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's assassin, was a raging lunatic who cut his own balls off with a pair of scissors after passing a couple of prostitutes on the street. He did not seek medical attention after he did that until after he had gone to a prayer meeting and had dinner. He also escaped from an insane asylum on horseback and was never seen again.
His name was Thomas H. Boston, Corbett, Link.
John R. Brinkley was an American doctor who would surgically implant goat testicles into men's scrotums to cure impotence. His story gets crazier from there.
If not for a technicality, he would have won the 1930 election for governor of Kansas. A lake in every county and goat testicles in every scrotum.
Félix Fauré, French president from 1895 to 1899, died while getting head.
She sucked her soul out of him.
Anton Leeuwenhoek, the father of microscopy, used his invention, the microscope, on his own sperm after one night with his wife. Sperm was unknown at the time and he thought they were little people.
Imagine the existential crisis you'd have after that one. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh would periodically masturbate into the Nile as a ritual of sorts to guarantee good harvests.
Pharaoh proceeds to make every day a good harvest, twice.
James Joyce had a fart fetish link. Greater than, you had an ass full of farts that night, darling, and I fed them out of you, big fat fellows, long windy ones, quick little merry cracks and a lot of tiny little naughty farties ending in a long gush from your hole. It is wonderful to F a farting woman when every F drives one out of her.
Brazilian emperor built a huge personal library just so he could freely shag his mistresses without being bothered.
Or poo, he's breeding again.
The guy was like, F Portugal, I'm having my own country with mistresses and sugarcane. The Mongols had a rule. You're not allowed to kill the leader of a country, or city-state, by piercing their skin. So they came up with ingenious ways of killing people. There were stories of a potential Khan that boiled a man alive. Other stories include pouring molten gold down a man's throat. Though not necessarily NSFW, Genghis Khan gave cities the option of surrendering, or face the option of killing every man, woman, and child in that city. He would literally genocide everyone in that city because the ruler wanted to fight back. And that's how Genghis Khan killed 10% of the world's population at that time, 20 to 40 million people.
They have killed Russian nobility by binding them, laying them on the ground, installing a giant wooden flooring directly on their bodies and having an all-nighter victory feast on that deck, with a lot of dancing and jumping. Records say the deck always stood firmly on the ground by morning.
People think that Vlad the Impaler stuck people with spikes through the guts, but that isn't what impaling is. It's so much worse. First you get a thick log, maybe 1.5 fists thick. Then you carve the tip into a blunt bullet shape. Too sharp and the spike will go through the victim too fast. Too blunt, and the victim won't be properly impaled. You grease up the spike with lard. You insert the bullet-shaped end into the victim's anus. You push it into at least a foot or more as in the victim. Then you haul them up. If you've calculated everything right, then the victim will remain alive, twitching, and completely unable to stop what is happening to him or her asterisk. Yes, this happened to women too, for days. Ultimately, the spike will erupt from the upper chest, back, or head. Fortunately, the victim will have died before then. Greater than the Sultan's army entered into the area of the impalements, which was 17 stades long and 7 stades wide. There were large stakes there on which, as it was said, about 20,000 men, women, and children had been spitted, quite a sight for the Turks and the Sultan himself. The Sultan was seized with amazement and said that it was not possible to deprive of his country a man who had done such great deeds, who had such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his realm and its people. And he said that a man who had done such things was worth much. The rest of the Turks were dumbfounded when they saw the multitude of men on the stakes. There were infants too affixed to their mothers on the stakes, and birds had made their nests in their entrails. I would rather be stuck through the guts with a spear than suffer actual impalement.
I may be mistaken, but didn't he do this to his own people as well? To show just how crazy he is, if he could do this to his own people, you show up and see that. Just imagine what he is gonna do to you if caught. Just F it up.
When the future Edward VII balked at his mistress's accounts saying, "Madam, I have spent enough on you to build a battleship," she replied, "And you have spent enough in me to float one."
That's pretty clever. I can see why he liked her.
Hawaiian kings commonly had harems of both male and female lovers. The first European to make a Hawaiian to English dictionary didn't want to scandalize his Victorian readers, so translated the term for the male lovers to something like intimate friend. This caused some degree of confusion when missionaries arrived asking to become the intimate friends of the Hawaiian nobility.
Oh my God, they were friends.
Hitler was very anti-DG in the 1930s. By the end he was on barbiturates, methamphetamines, coke and amphetamines. Buddhist monk from Bhutan Drukpa Kunli was known for his crazy methods of enlightening other beings, mostly women, which earned him the title, the Saint of 5,000 Women. Among other things, women would seek his blessing in the form of sexual intercourse. His intention was to show that it is possible to be enlightened, impart enlightenment, and still lead a very healthy sex life, and to demonstrate that celibacy was not necessary for being enlightened. Because of this power to awaken unenlightened beings, Kunli's penis is referred to as the thunderbolt of flaming wisdom, and he himself is known as the fertility saint. For this reason, women from all around the world visited his monastery to seek his blessing. Some of his most famous performances include urinating on sacred thankas, stripping down naked, or offering his testicles to a famous lama. He is one of very few Buddhist teachers to almost always appear in Bhutanese paintings topless. It is known that Drukpa Kunli would not bless anyone who came to seek his guidance and help unless they brought a beautiful woman and a bottle of wine.
President Lyndon B. Johnson was obsessed with his penis and used it to control those around him. He gave it the nickname, Jumbo. He'd threatened senators by saying he was gonna sleep with their wives, and if he went to the bathroom in the middle of a conversation, he expected the other person to follow him into the bathroom to continue the conversation and would get upset if they tried to just wait outside. Sometimes he would swing around while standing at a urinal and talking to someone, leaving his genitals exposed. He also drove himself around on his ranch and stopped to pee on the side of the road, so the Secret Service agents had to cover him, and there was a gust of wind that blew the pee onto one of the agent's legs, and Johnson said that it was his prerogative to pee on the agent's leg. Journalists once asked him, why continue the war in Vietnam? And he sent all the women out of the room, took his penis out, flopped it on the table and said, "This is why."
So Johnson was a DK. Got it.
Thomas Jefferson had syphilis and loved hookers.
How I wonder if there's some connections between those two facts.
The raping of local women was commonly seen as a mean to keep invading soldiers' morale high. Local women would cover their faces with charcoal, ash and dirt to be unattractive so as to avoid the same predicament. Some even went as far as harming themselves to produce unappealing scars on their faces and bodies.
Man that just sad and they're fed up.
The artificial sweetener aspartame was discovered when a researcher thought it smelled sweet and had a taste in his laboratory. The first rule of chemistry is apparently never to taste anything. So definitely NSFW.
It took me a super long, ultra-depressing doom scroll through mass RP and murder to get to this. Thank goodness for the wholesome relief of bad research practice.
The guy who invented cornflakes, John Kellogg, hated masturbation, so he recommended a bland diet which included his cereal to prevent kids from touching themselves inappropriately, also putting acid on the clit or sewing the foreskin closed. Edit. It was actually John's brother William who invented cornflakes by accident, but John still recommended cornflakes to people in their diet as well as other things to prevent masturbation. Edit 2. He also was a huge advocate for circumcision, which led it to becoming more popular because he also thought it would prevent boys from masturbating.
The dildo was invented before the wheel.
To be fair, a banana's easier to make than a tire. Casanova had regular sex with his daughter, and said words along the lines of, "No man can love his daughter like a father can." What the actual F?
IRC. He met a girl and had relations with her before finding out she was the daughter of a former lover. The former lover then told him she was his daughter. According to Casanova, they later had a threesome. This all happened later in his life when his reputation was fading, so I always assume this is made up for notoriety.
Mozart composed a song which literally translates to "lick me in the ass, Link." Source link.
Don't ask me how I know this, but Insane Clown Posse did a cover of this produced by Jack White.
The Battle of Chongping claims to be one of the most bloodiest battles of human history. One of the leaders, Bai Qi, decided to bury alive hundreds of thousands war prisoners in order to assert dominance.
King Edward VII of England got fat from partying too much and couldn't have sex in certain positions he liked. Either he or his prostitutes would get tired. So he had a special chair designed and made for him so he could keep banging chicks, sometimes 2 at a time.
Pavlov, of Pavlov's dogs fame, the famed Russian scientist, actually tested the phenomenon on orphaned young children as he could starve them with little or no criticism or complaint. There's some shocking B.W. footage knocking about on the internet that looks like they have had equipment surgically inserted into their cheek. Dark.
Ancient Rome was covered in penises. All around Pompeii, excavators discovered phallic symbols, from intricately carved 3D cock and balls to scribbled graffiti on street corners, above bread ovens, outside houses, in bathhouses, literally DKS everywhere. When Pompeii was discovered in the 1700s, this fact was suppressed by puritanical types and the church. Italians of the area now use chili peppers as a replacement symbol, including as a necklace pendant you will see everywhere. Of course, peppers didn't exist in Europe until Columbus returned from the New World. So chili pepper now equates to cock in southern Italy, and if you walk around Pompeii, look out for all the DKS.
IIRC, the phallic symbols in Pompeii were used as arrows, signs, to point out the nearest brothels and W houses. Or at least that's what the tour guide said.
Much of what formed initial, early internet commerce was pioneered by P-sites.
Somewhere I read that the number 1 and 2 in ranked industries for effectively driving advancements in IT were 1. The military and 2. P.
Raphael Sanzio, the Italian Renaissance painter, died due to a fever after a night of excessive sex. So that pretty much confirmed too much sex can kill you.
There was a ritual that is believed to have taken place towards the end of the Viking era while people were still pagan, just before Christianity took over. A horse penis is chopped off, wrapped in linen and onions, to preserve it, and people would recite poetry to it. Edit, some top-notch replies to this having a right good laugh, tears of joy.
There was a birth control plant in Roman times, but it went extinct because the Romans did a certain action too much. Edit, that the action was intercourse and they used the plant so much it went extinct.
It had heart-shaped leaves. This is where the heart shape comes from and why it's associated with love.
In 1345, the Mongols, although not knowing about germ theory, unwittingly created germ warfare when they catapulted their own corpses across Kaffa during a long siege that wasn't going well for them. The people fled and spread the Black Plague throughout harbor to harbor. Link.
There used to be a parasite in ancient Egypt which caused men to bleed through their penises. Apparently, it was so common among men that ancient Egyptian thought that men had periods.
Really? That's insane. That scary parasite still around today?
King Edward VII and his mighty sex chair.
How Cleopatra once seduced another country's ruler by posing naked in a rolled-up carpet and having her servants unroll her as a gift in the ruler's chamber. Can't remember exact details, but something along those lines.
Yep, Julius Caesar was the dude. And she didn't just seduce him, she pretty much got him to dethrone her brother and make the new queen of Egypt. She would regularly visit him in Rome for several years until his assassination.
I can't find the story, because I don't want to end up on a list. In the 19th century, New Orleans brothels were notorious for having underage sex workers. There's a kind of famous biography of one that said she started when she was 10 years old. Doesn't get much more NSFW than that.
The Japanese occupation of China, Korea and the Philippines include the kidnapping of girls and women and house them in brothels to become comfort women, to be RPD repeatedly by Japanese soldiers. The Japanese government denies this. Lawsuits and UN pressured them to const certain aspect of this blatant sex slavery. A lot of the details go undocumented and only lives on by recorded testimonies of the very few who are unfortunate enough to have survived to their hell and live to tell about it. An Emirjan nun in China tried to protect his students from being taken. She was so distraught she committed suicide. In the 90s, a Chinese-American author made it her mission to record as many testimonies as she could and put it in a NY Time best-selling book. But the stories were so horrifying, she committed suicide.
Ima Filipino. My grandmother and her sisters used to store chicken blood so that whenever Japanese soldiers would come and check their houses, they would fake being on their periods and put blood on their underwear to avoid being taken an RPD. It would always work, but they said they were always so terrified.
That Genghis Khan killed so many people, he lowered the ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere.
Also, is the ancestor of 0.5% of the human race. He F'd that much.
The sex crimes from Unit 731 in Japan, during World War II. Female prisoners were RPD frequently and intentionally and unintentionally given STIs. Soldiers would continue to sexually assault women even after they were infected, and call them jam-filled buns or jelly buns because they bled vaguely while infected with syphilis, chlamydia, etc. The story of Junko and the Yakuza kids, effing depressing and enraging.
I don't think the Japanese ever hear about what the Japanese did in World War II. That poo is not safe for any place.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.